think what you're asking me, Rosie, is the system creating bad incentives for young people to not get into work and not take the steps that they need to launch themselves into working life? That is exactly the issue that we're focused on.
How do you show you've arrived on the world stage? You meet President Zelensky, of course. Zelensky's coming to the UK to be Andy Burnham's first official international visitor today. Expect handshakes and photographs. The government says the visit shows the UK's support for Ukraine is unwavering. But will that support be backed up by extra defence spending? Hamish Falconer is the European Relations Minister and he joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
Andy Burnham's going to tell Zelensky he has our unwavering support. But there is currently an unfilled £4.7 billion black hole in the UK's defence investment plan. Can we really say we're standing with Ukraine when that's the case?
We can, and I'm sure President Zelensky will put in his own words the importance of UK support to Ukraine. I know that in addition to the very important talks about diplomacy they'll have, the Prime Minister and the President will also discuss the latest iteration of UK support for Ukraine, which includes new technology for helping the Ukrainians deal with the counter, particularly the Russian threat from drones. It's called Stone Cloak, and we'll be transferring that technology to Ukraine today. So in practice, as well as in words, Prime Minister Andy Burnham will be providing support to Ukraine today.
I'm sure President Zelensky will also want to stress the importance of funding defence. Yesterday, Wes Streeting, the new Defence Secretary, said meeting the spending commitments on defence was a resignation issue for him. It had also been for John Healey, the former Defence Secretary. Is it a resignation matter for you too?
Look, Andy Burnham has been absolutely clear. He thinks this is a real priority, and you can believe him in that, given that he appointed John Healey as Chancellor. So I am absolutely sure that the Prime Minister shares mine, the Defence Secretary's, the whole of the Labour parties, and indeed the country's desire to make sure the defence gets the finance it deserves. And I'll just say, Rosie, we had a manifesto commitment to get to 2.5% of GDP on defence. We are already at 2.7%. I think it's £300 billion that we'll be spending over the next 4 years. We have shown that we mean it.
But John Healey wanted that to be 3% of GDP by 2030. He actually said in his resignation letter the country wouldn't be safe if we didn't meet those commitments. Is the new government now committed to meeting that then? 3% of GDP by 2030?
That very man is now the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who understands the importance of this. We have set it out as clearly as we can. The Prime Minister set it out again over the weekend. We need to work through what is required to get to 3%, but we will stand by our commitments, which is 3.5 by 2035.
So actually what you're saying there is you're not currently committed to that timeline of 3% by 2030.
I'm saying that give the Chancellor and the Prime Minister a chance, but given who the Chancellor is, I hope that your listeners can take real confidence from our commitment in this.
Could you give us a date when you would reach that 3%?
That's a matter for the Chancellor. He'll set it out in the normal way in the budgets and the spending reviews to come.
So that will probably come, we expect, maybe in the autumn budget?
I'm not going to be drawn on how the Chancellor, who is just in post, chooses to set out timelines for major fiscal events.
OK. We've got wildfires in France and Spain. They've displaced 350,000 people. Just in your capacity as European Relations Minister, what kind of conversations have you been having, if any, with France and Spain about British citizens who might be in those danger zones?
So for all British citizens in France and Spain, please do follow the advice of the local authorities. Keep updated on our travel advice, which is changing regularly. The Foreign Secretary has been in touch with his counterparts in France and Spain. It's obviously a very worrying set of developments, and there are many British nationals who are affected. Our hotlines are open if people want to call and speak to the Foreign Office, consular services who are on standby to provide help where they can. But the most important advice is listen to local authorities. The one area you didn't mention, of course, Rosie, is also Scotland, where there are wildfires, and we're, of course, talking to the Scottish Government too about what support we can provide.
I want to move on to the story on the front page of the Times today. There are more than 87,000 16 and 17-year-olds currently claiming personal independent payments. We call them PIP. They're the non-means tested benefit intended to cover the extra costs of disability. There's a contrast being made here between a 16-year-old working the legal maximum term time. They take home £94 a week. That same teenager who could be signed off with anxiety could receive more than double the hourly equivalent while staying at home. Do you think that's right?
So I think where people have real health issues that need help, that's what the system is there to do. But it's obviously a source of real concern to me, and I think the Prime Minister was clear about this over the weekend as well, that there are an increasing number of young people who are on PIP rather than in work. It is right that the last Prime Minister and the last Cabinet took decisions in order to make sure that there are guarantees that if you're out of work for 18 months, you'll get an opportunity, whether it's training or employment, to try and get you back into work.
But could we just talk about that contrast for those teenagers, that you actually would get double the amount of income in a week if you're on PIP rather than going to work? Does that sound like the right balance to you?
Well, it sounds to me like where people need serious help because they have health conditions that they cannot address in any other way, that's what the PIP system is there for. But I think what you're asking me, Rosie, is the system creating bad incentives for young people to not get into work and not take the steps that they need to launch themselves into working life? That is exactly the issue that we're focused on.
So you think there are some negative incentives here?
Well, I think that's behind your question. You're asking me, is the PIP system meaning that lots of young people are choosing to go on PIP rather than work? And I don't know whether or not that is the case, but I do know that there are an increasing number of young people on PIP. And what really worries me, and I see it in my own constituency, is when young people don't get into work early in their life, it often gets much harder to get into work later in life. And work is such an important part of life, not just because people should be paying their own way wherever they can, but because work is such an important source of meaning and dignity in people's lives.
So what people, I think, will be looking for is how you better motivate people to work. I mean, Andy Burnham said in that interview you're talking about over the weekend, he might increase the conditions on people required to receive benefits. How should he do that?
Well, listen, that will be a conversation that the Work and Pensions Secretary will be having with their ministers.
But in essence, do you think he should do that?
Look, I think we need to do everything that we can to help young people into work with whatever support they need to do that. And the Prime Minister was clear, this is not just about punitive measures, it's about giving people the support they need.
But it's also, what he's saying is increasing conditions on people required to get the benefits. So that is making it more difficult to receive them rather than just providing those work incentives. Is that the right balance?
Well, I think in that interview he talked about both things, but look, we got to look at all options to make sure that we reverse the trends of more young people being out of work.
Could you tell us what any of those options are right now?
I can't. I'm sure that the relevant ministers will be coming forward once they've had those discussions.
I think there is some frustration. We've had Adam Milburn's report. We're not going to get recommendations until the autumn. The problems have been laid very bare, but I understand you're not prepared to say anything more on that right now. Final thing. We know that some of Andy Burnham's senior advisors have looked at suggestions to make voting compulsory. It could be that everyone's got to vote, and if you chose not to vote, you get a £10 fine. That's one of the suggestions that have been put forward. Would you like to see in this country voting made compulsory?
The government's got no plans to bring forward compulsory voting. We have made proposals for changes to the voting system in our manifesto, including votes at 16, and we're working through that. So
you can rule out compulsory voting?
We've got no plans.
OK, thank you very much. Hamish Falconer, MP, the Intergovernmental Relations and European Relations Minister. Thank you for your time.